Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining the inaugural installment of our BPS webinar series. Today, we are going to be giving an overview of the Oregon Building Performance Standards 101. This is the first webinar of what we expect to be a monthly series that will cover all aspects of the Oregon Building Performance Standard. I know we're letting people into the meeting right now, but we will be recording this presentation and it will be posted to our BPS website for later on-demand access and reference. So we're holding this live session as an opportunity for folks to view it in real time. And then we'll have a period for Q&A at the end, but just know that this will be recorded and it will be up on our website for future reference and on-demand viewing. So I'll take a moment just to introduce myself. My name is Blake Shalide. I manage the Codes and Standards section at the Oregon Department of Energy, and Building Performance Standard program is administered by the Codes and Standards section, by our section. So I'm going to let the rest of the BPS team introduce themselves real quickly. I'll just go as we see on my screen, and then we'll kind of move forward with the presentation. And let's see. Judy, can you go ahead and share the slide deck now, just so we're all seeing it? I'm not seeing it yet, but while Judy's pulling that up, we can just go around the room to introduce. So we'll start with Andrew.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Andrew Johnson, an analyst with the Codes and Standards team, and I will hand it over to Ken.
Happy Friday, everybody. Ken Davies, Program Analyst, Codes and Standards, Building Performance Standards. Madeline.
Good afternoon, everyone. Madeline O'Dwyer, Program Analyst in Codes and Standards. I'll turn it over to Lisa.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Gartland. I'm a facilities engineer here at ODO's Codes and Standards section, working on Oregon BPS and other things. And who's left? Judy has, no, Josh. Josh, you haven't introduced yourself.
Yeah, I'm not. Josh Price. I'm an analyst here on the Codes and Standards team. I will be working exclusively on the Berry program.
And now Judy. It's Judy. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Judy, and I am the public service representative for Codes and Standards.
Thanks, Judy. Thanks, everybody. That rounds out our BPS team. Hopefully, folks on the call have had an opportunity to interact with one or all of the BPS team, Codes and Standards team members so far. But if you haven't, you may in the near future. So I mentioned before, this is a BPS 101 presentation. It's the first installment of our what will be an expected monthly webinar series that we'll be hosting to cover a variety of BPS-related topics. With that, let's move on to slide 2. This is ODO's mission and what we do. Just a reminder that all of our programs are targeting the vision of a safe, equitable, clean, and sustainable energy future. We think that the BPS plays an integral role in this, helping to ensure efficient, cost-effective operational energy use for large commercial and multifamily buildings in Oregon. And we think it aligns with several of ODO's specific focus actions. It's a central repository for data. There'll be a lot of really useful energy data for commercial buildings that will be generated as a result of the program. It's a venue for problem solving. Commercial buildings use a lot of energy in Oregon, and there's opportunities for cost-effective energy efficiency, and the BPS will help drive those and help realize those. Energy education, helping building owners and industry to make buildings more efficient. There's the regulatory aspect, and then energy programs and activities like incentives for early and voluntary compliance. So really weaved within all of what we do is our building performance standard. Next slide. This is an overview of the Microsoft Teams functionality. If you haven't had a lot of exposure to it in the past, although I think a lot of us work in a virtual environment. So you can see the chat feature on the upper left, along with the raise hand functions and reactions nearby. Please also note that the video and audio settings, and please place yourself on mute unless you're recognized and intending to speak. Since we're recording this presentation, we're going to allow speakers today to move through the content, but please feel free to put questions in the chat along the way or take note on your own along the way, and we'll hold a Q&A session at the end to hopefully address everything that comes up. But we're going to hold all Q&A to the end so that we can move through the material and have a continuous presentation for posting. Next slide, please. So today we'll go over the basics of Oregon's Building Performance Standard Program, energy use index intensity targets, energy professionals, and BPS incentives. This webinar is open to the public and geared towards building owners, property managers, and industry leaders and partners supporting BPS compliance. It's an especially good opportunity for those who are still new to BPS to attend and ask questions. The webinar is designed to help building owners and representatives better understand the basic framework and requirements of BPS and what preparations they can start now to prepare for eventual compliance dates. We know that a lot of owners and industry representatives are very new to BPS. Maybe this is the first you've heard of it. Maybe you got a letter and you're wondering, is this legitimate? What is this? What do I need to do? Maybe you heard something from somebody who heard something from somebody, maybe a utility, a consultant, a friend, and they're thinking, like, what do I need to do? What can I do to learn more? Then this webinar is for you. If you've been a part of Odo's BPS development process along the way, through our rulemaking, through other meetings, most or all of this will be very familiar and a refresher for you. So with this 101 and high-level focus in mind, we'd like to keep questions focused along with that same level of high-level detail. We're always happy to discuss individual, specific nuance like building situations, but we find that we can better serve those, that level of detail through more direct interactions through our help desk, email, and phone lines. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Madeline to get into the heart of the webinar and start out with BPS at a glance.
Thank you so much, Blake. In this section, we are going to go over just what Blake was describing. What is BPS and some of the action that you should be taking right now. Let's go to the next slide and jump right in. So there are two different tiers that are covered in BPS. There are Tier 1 and Tier 2 buildings. We'll first focus on Tier 1 buildings, and then we'll cover what Tier 2 buildings are. Tier 1 buildings you can see on the left-hand side of your screen here in orange. They compose of non-residential, hotel, and motel buildings over 35,000 square feet. We'll go into compliance, what that means, but first let's just talk about compliance dates. You'll see that the largest of these buildings, 200,000 square feet and above, are the first to comply. And that first compliance date is June 1st of 2028. Next would be the second largest of these Tier 1 buildings, which is buildings between 90 and 200,000 square feet. And lastly, the smallest of the Tier 1 buildings, which have a compliance date of June 1st of 2030. And those buildings are non-residential hotel and motels between 35,000 and 90,000 square feet. Whenever we're talking about square feet, we're talking about gross square feet, and we're also talking about just the building. We want to exclude all parking garages or attached parking. Now you'll see that there is a second color on this diagram in green, and there it's labeled as a regular Tier 2 or special Tier 2. No matter if it's regular or special, these Tier 2 buildings all have the same compliance date and the same compliance actions. These regular Tier 2 buildings will cover non-residential, hotel, and motels between 20 and 35,000 square feet. And the special Tier 2 buildings start at 35,000 square feet, and they are composed of very specific building types. So multifamily residential, hospitals, schools, universities, dormitories, barracks, prisons, and residential and senior care facilities all fall under the special Tier 2 that, again, starts at 35,000 square feet. Regardless if you are regular or special, if you are Tier 2, your compliance date is July 1st of 2028. let's go to the next slide. This next slide is all the information I just said, but in a table. You'll see that on the left is how big the building is, in the middle is the property type, and on the right-hand side is the tier and compliance state. I will just reiterate once again that no matter the size of that tier 2 building, the compliance date is the same of July 1st, 2028. Next slide, please. So I've been saying compliance, but what does that mean? This slide talks about the requirements of the tier 1 and tier 2 buildings. Both tier 1 and tier buildings must benchmark their building. Benchmarking, we'll go into a little bit more about what data you need, but the important aspect of this is that the building will need to find their energy use intensity target, and they will need to calculate their energy use intensity. Later in this presentation, we'll go into what these phrases mean and how you do that. But when we're thinking about compliance, and we're thinking about tier 1 and tier 2, both of these tiers must do these two things: find the energy intensity target and calculate their energy intensity. Now, if you're a tier 1 building, there are some stricter requirements for you. The first thing is, no matter where you are in your target, you will have to complete an operations and maintenance program, as well as an energy management plan. We have outlines and templates for both of these documents on our website. If and only if you're a tier 1 building and your EUI is greater than your EUI target, then you must complete an ASHRAE level 2 energy audit and look through what your next compliance actions might be. And we'll get through that also later in the slide deck. Next slide. So is your building exempt? This is usually at the top of everyone's questions. The most important thing to know about the Oregon BPS exemptions is that they're not automatic. Each exemption will have to be applied for each building. We do have several types of exemptions, and those are listed on the left-hand side. At a glance, there's 3 types of property types that can file for exemptions. Those are manufacturing, industrial, and agricultural. And then we have a couple of scenarios of buildings that can also file for exemptions. These are buildings that have no certificate of occupancy, have less than 50% physical occupancy, or large amounts of unconditioned floor area. The last exemption that we have for Oregon BPS is financial hardships. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a couple bullets on historic buildings. Please note that historic buildings are not exempt from this program, but they do have some lenience in the energy efficiency measures that they will have to install. At a glance, these historic buildings will not need to install any energy efficiency measures that could compromise the historic integrity of the building. Next slide, please. Everyone's second favorite question after the exemptions is penalties. What kind of penalties can these buildings face? I'm going to bookend this slide with saying that we at Odo really do not want to be handing out penalties. We really want to work with each building owner to figure out a plan that works for the building, whether that means you're meeting the compliance date or not. There's always a conversation to be had, and there's always something that we can figure out as long as that line of communication is open. If that line of communication is not open and there are no plans, there are penalties for tier 1 buildings. The maximum value of those penalties for tier 1 buildings is $5,000 plus $1 per square foot of the gross square foot floor area per year. And this penalty can be for the duration of any of the continuing violations. It should be noted that tier 2 buildings do not have the same penalties. Next slide, please. Okay, so now you have all of this information. what do you do today? What do you do tomorrow and next month? The first thing that you need to do is verify your building information on our property inventory list. Every building is assigned a unique building ID, and that is then shortened to a UBID. You use this UBID or the address of the building to go into the property inventory list and to ensure that we have the right contact information, property type, and square footage. The second thing you'll need to do is gather energy-related information. Third is understand compliance paths. And finally, you need to start identifying energy professionals. Let's now go step by step to see that in a little bit more detail. So, verify your building information. On the screen here, on the left-hand side, is a screenshot of what our property inventory list looks like. You'll see that immediately there's instructions on the front page, but also there on the top right is how to use the property inventory list, which has more written instructions as well as a video that takes you through. This site is what you'll use to register and submit some building information. Next slide, please. What information are you submitting? Well, after you find your building, either using the UBID or address, you'll need to fill out the required information. This required information is like, how big is your building? What's your building use type? What's the address of your building? Who's the best person to contact? Plus additional notes. One of the reasons why this is so important for us is to know what buildings are out there and if we are hitting all the buildings that we think, as well as this allows us to open a direct line of communication with you. The contact information that you're putting into the pill is not being used for any other messaging except updates to the program or actions that you need to take. Next slide, please. So we said our second step was to gather energy-related information. What information is this? The first three pieces of information you need to know is your property type, your activity type, and your gross floor area. Now, the property type is going to be used to figure out if you're tier 1, if you're tier 2, if you're a special tier 2, or if you're a regular tier 2. Your building activity type is going to be used to help calculate the appropriate EUI, energy use intensity, target for that building. And finally, that building gross floor area is going to help determine your compliance state. Next slide, please. Now, the other piece of energy-related information you'll need to collect is the energy use and metering. This is because energy use intensity is all based on the energy that you use in your building. This information can be found through utility bills. It can be found through energy meters. It can be found through invoices. All this information is helpful, and it is how you'll figure out what your energy use intensity is. Next slide, please. Now, when we're talking about information and data, we are talking about benchmarking through at least 12 consecutive months within within 2 years prior to your Oregon BPS submittal. That means that if you have a compliance date of June 1st of 2029, you can pick any 12 consecutive months between 2027 and 2029 to show us what your EUI is. Maybe you had a piece of equipment breakdown. Maybe you didn't have too many people in the building and your energy was looking great for a few months. We don't care where that sliding scale is as long as it falls within the 2 years prior to your date and it's 12 consecutive months. The other important information on this slide has to do with your utilities. If you are in a building that has multiple tenants and you're within what we've called qualified utilities, which are PGE, Pacific Power, eWeb, Avista, Cascade Natural Gas, and Northwest Natural Gas. You may be able to get the data for these buildings aggregated. This is for buildings with at least 3 tenants in a commercial space or 5 tenants in a residential space. If you don't have data, unfortunately, we have to treat your building as if it doesn't meet its energy target at all. And then that your building will have to go through the investment criteria. Let's go to the next slide. So, understand your compliance paths. We're going to first go through some of these different forms, and then we'll talk about the different compliance paths if you're not going to be able to reach your energy use intensity target. For tier 2 buildings, your compliance path is fairly straightforward. You either need to submit a form A or G, based if you're submitting for a single building or a grouped building. A for a single building, G for grouped. A form B that identifies your EUI target, and a form C that identifies your EUI. That's it for tier 2. For tier 1, your building is going to need to benchmark, attest to the operations and maintenance program, fill out your energy management plan, and meet your energy target. Now, if a tier 1 building is not going to meet their energy target, they will also need to inform Odo within 180 days or 6 months before the building's compliance date, and they'll need to choose their compliance path, which is in the next slide. So, what are the different compliance paths? The easiest on paper is compliance. I say that it's easiest on paper because there's a lot that goes into understanding your compliance for a tier 1 building. But if your building cannot meet the target before the compliance date, and again, this is based on 12 consecutive months of data, then there are 3 additional compliance pathways that the building owner can take. There's conditional compliance. Conditional compliance is when you benchmark your data shows that you are not meeting your energy target. You go through an ASHRAE level 2 energy audit, and from there you get a list of energy efficiency measures that show you how you can bring down your EUI to target. In conditional compliance, you implement those energy efficiency measures before the compliance date. Great. So your building's going to go under target. However, you just don't have the data. Once you contact Odo and say, hey, I've done what I'm supposed to do, it's just I don't have the data, you'll be put on a conditional compliance pathway, which grants you that conditional compliance until your building's data shows that you're hitting the target. Investment criteria can be found. Investment criteria is when you have your building is not going to meet its target. You go through your ASHRAE level 2 energy audit, and you get a list of energy efficiency measures. Now, in the investment criteria, you either implement those energy efficiency measures after the compliance date. So let's say your energy efficiency measures show you need a new boiler and you need to complete an envelope, an updated envelope to your building. But your boiler is supposed to go out in 2 years anyways. This is a way for you to make sure that these energy efficiency measures are cost effective, and you won't meet your compliance date, but you know what you need to do. And so you implement those energy efficiency measures after the compliance date. Another way that you go through the investment criteria is when you know you're not going to meet your compliance target at all. And that's when you do everything you can, and you don't meet the energy target, but you still do, again, your best effort in reaching a better energy efficiency for your building. The last option is investment criteria through conditional compliance. Again, this is when your energy efficiency measures are completed after the compliance date, but your building eventually does come into that target EUI. I know it's a lot of information. Once again, these slides are going to be on the website, and we have guidance documents that go through every step of the way. I'm going to pass it off now to Lisa to talk more about these energy targets.
Great. Actually, go back for a second. I just want to make one thing clear about the different compliance paths and about meeting your energy target. If you don't meet your energy target, you need to follow one of those 3 compliance paths on the bottom. Hopefully you can meet your energy target, but a lot of buildings aren't going to be able to. They're just not, no matter how many cost-effective measures you implement. And in that case, I just want to make sure that you understand we're not forcing you to meet a target. We're asking you to try to take action and reduce energy use. So just to make that very clear. So next slide, let's talk about, we're talking about these energy targets. First of all, we want to go through that. What are they? How are they found for each building? How were these base target values that we're using determined? And how realistic do we think they are? So let's move into it. Next slide. So what are energy targets? Energy targets are used to benchmark buildings. You'll hear that term benchmarking a lot with this program. Benchmarking is simply comparing the energy use of your building to the energy use of buildings that are a lot like it. In Oregon BPS, the parameters that we're comparing, we call them energy use intensity, which is the actual use of your building, to its energy use intensity target. I also call that, just for shorthand, the energy target, but it really stands for the energy use intensity target. So I'm using this term energy use intensity. What is it? It is the actual energy use of your building over a year divided by its gross floor area. So that's the square footage of your building. And we never include parking areas when we're calculating this. So we determine this energy use intensity using US EPA's free online tool, the Energy Star Portfolio Manager. Many people already have these accounts set up. We don't just use regular energy use intensity, we use a weather normalized value. We'll have more training on exactly what we do with that. But for now, I just want you to understand energy use intensity is your energy use divided by your building's square footage. The energy use intensity target, or the energy target, is this comparison value, and it's based on the activity type of your building and how you operate your building. So these are predetermined values that we set, and we did that based on the best available information we could find about building energy use in Oregon and in the Northwest and across the US. They're determined for each building. For your particular building, we have a free spreadsheet, which is called the OR BPS EUI Target Tool. Great catchy name. And that's a downloadable spreadsheet, and we use that to find your target. Let's go to the next slide. So how do we find these energy targets? So this target tool, it's just an Excel spreadsheet calculator. It's downloadable. It's intended for use by energy professionals, and we'll talk about what those are in a few minutes. And it's not really for use by just the general public or even a building owner unless they've got some background in this area. But it will calculate not just your energy target, but you will have some idea what your tier and compliance state is, but filling out this target tool will confirm what your building's tier and compliance state are. So it's important to do the target tool and do it early, play with it early. So what is the energy use intensity target? How is it calculated? Well, we start with these base energy use intensity target values, and then we multiply them by an operating factor. So these are both based on the activity type of the building. The operating factors vary based on the activity type. You can separate out different areas of your building to have different targets and operating factors. What the tool does is does a weighted average of all the areas in your building and all of its activity types and operating factors, and it comes up with an overall energy target. So I said it once again, the base energy target depends on your building's activity type. It also depends on the climate zone. As you know, you might know, there are 2 climate zones in Oregon, 4C, which is the coastal climate zone, and 5B, which is the hotter, drier, colder inland climate. We have predetermined values for 113 activity types, and they're all hard programmed into our target tool, so you don't have to look them up or anything. And the operating factor also depends on your activity type, but it also depends on the operating hours that you have for your building. So you'll figure out your weekly operating hours. We have some guidelines for how to do that. And those factors are determined for the 113 activity types. And there's 3 ranges of operating hours from 0 to 40, 51 to 167, and 168, which is really a building that operates 24/7. So I know that's kind of a lot of information, and I'm going through it pretty quickly. Rest assured, we're having another seminar that will go through the target tool and how to use it and what all this stuff means. But that's coming up probably in March, so stay tuned. Next slide. So how were these base target values determined? As I said before, it came from analysis of the best available data we had. I can tell you that we had national data from something called CBEX, the Commercial Buildings Energy Consumption Survey, that's run, I don't know exactly when it's run, every 6 years, I guess. We had data from 2012 and 2018. We used regional data from something called the Commercial Building Stock Assessment from 2019, 2014, and 2009. And there was also some City of Seattle benchmarking data that we used. Then there was local data from Oregon, state-owned buildings data, Oregon Public School data, and some data from the City of Portland benchmarking program. So we set these targets. We tried to take, if we took national data, we would correct it for Oregon weather. Same thing with any regional data. We corrected it for Oregon weather and Oregon building types as much as we could, and set these targets. So we figured out kind of how much on average the energy uses in these buildings. What we were aiming for is for about half of Oregon's buildings already are meeting their energy target. Which actually was, our aim was from the legislature told us to do that. And then half of them, might not meet their target. So next slide. So that gets us into, we set these targets. How realistic do we think they are? As I said before, we were mandated by House Bill 3409 to make targets that are not more stringent than the average energy use intensity. So we're expecting about half the buildings not to meet target and the other half to meet target. If you're a tier 2 building and you don't meet target, no big deal, because all you have to do is tell us what your target is and tell us what your energy use is. If you're a tier 1 building and you don't meet target, it's a little more problematic. I don't know. It's going to be a little more work because you will need to do an energy audit for that building and then implement cost-effective energy efficiency measures. So, we are expecting a lot of buildings that will have to do this, a lot of the tier 1 buildings. So we are very aware that these targets carry a lot of weight, and we are looking at them carefully. We came up with values, but we are going to be comparing them as we go to what information we're collecting. We're already starting to compare them with the latest data from Portland's benchmarking program. And frankly, at this point, most building types look pretty good. There are a few things that might be problematic, and we're going to keep thinking about what to do with that. But as building data is collected, we're going to keep looking at it and making sure that the targets are realistic. So right now we think they're pretty good, maybe with a few exceptions. Next slide. So I want to get into what are Oregon energy professionals, what kinds of energy professionals are needed for this program, what are their responsibilities, how can you become an Oregon qualified energy professional, and how can building owners find one of these professionals. Next slide. So we have 3 different types of energy professionals. One is called, I know it's a little confusing, qualified energy manager, QEM, a qualified person, and a qualified energy auditor. So let's go to the next slide to figure out what it is they all are supposed to be doing. So here's a very busy, busy table, but this is talking about who's responsible for what in this program. So there's a bunch of forms. Form A, Form G, which are basically just applications, Form X, which is an exemption, Form H, if you want to document that you have an historic building. Forms B and C are the two big ones for either a qualified energy manager or a qualified person to fill out. So these forms are required for both Tier 1 and Tier 2 buildings. Tier 2 buildings can have either the qualified energy manager or the qualified person fill them out. Tier 1 buildings, the larger buildings, need a qualified person. And we will talk about qualified person as a slightly more experienced and certified professional, not slightly, a more experienced and certified professional. Other things that are required only for Tier 1 buildings are the O&M program, the EMP. There's a few types of groups of buildings that might have to do a decarbonization plan if they have some kind of district plant. That's going to be rare, but in any event, a qualified person will be required to certify those programs and or come up with a decarbonization plan. Then there's that third type of energy professional called the qualified energy auditor. They are going to be responsible for running your energy audit and submitting Form E that tells us all about the energy audit. There's an optional life cycle cost analysis that the qualified energy auditor would also need to do. Next slide. So who are these people, or who can they be? So a qualified energy manager or a qualified person must be identified for all Tier 2 buildings. And as I said in the previous slide, they're supposed to fill out the Form B and the Form C for Tier 2 buildings. You can have a slightly more qualified person or a more qualified person or a qualified energy manager for Tier 2. So in order to be a qualified energy manager, you don't just, say, oh, great, I'm a QEM, no problem. You have to actually tell us who you are and what your experience is. We're looking for people with at least 2 years of either educational or professional experience with commercial building operations or building energy management. Or if you want to be a QEM and you already meet the definition of a qualified person, you can also be a QEM. And we'll go through that in a minute. I want to say this is going to be probably, we don't have a whole lot of QEM applications yet, but this is going to be our biggest category, I think, because first of all, there's a whole lot more Tier 2 buildings. And also because owners or managers of Tier 2 buildings, you often have experience already, and you can just tell us about that experience and qualify as your own qualified energy manager for your building. But, I want to tell you, you have to submit that Form Q to us first. So I expect to see a lot of people submitting that to us, and I'm looking forward to it. Next slide. The qualified person has to be identified for all Tier 1 buildings, and they need to complete a Form B and a Form C for those buildings, and they're responsible for looking for submitting the O&M and EMP checklists for those buildings. Qualified person also has to tell us who they are by submitting a Form Q. Should do it before they start doing any work on any of these buildings. So a qualified person has to have training and expertise in building energy use analysis and at least one of this whole list of certifications. They can be a professional engineer, a professional architect. They could be a QEA, the Qualified Energy Auditor, which we'll go through next. There are a couple other certifications. There's a Certified Energy Manager, or CEM, that you can get through the Association of Energy Engineers. There's a Building Operator Certification, Level 2, that you can get. There's an Energy Management Professional Certification you can get through the Energy Management Association. I'll go to the bottom one. There's a Building Commissioning Professional. Any certification we've missed that's a building commissioning professional certified by ANSI, ISO, IEC, etc. One of these accredited organizations, that is a valid certification. We also accept students who have completed the Building Controls program at Lane Community College, their energy management system background, or an equivalent degree approved by Odo. I will tell you right now, we have not gotten to the state of approving any equivalent degrees, and a few people have asked us if it's good enough, or, they do have some kind of energy management background, educational background, and we just have not, we don't have the bandwidth right now to vet these programs and check to see that they actually earn the degree, all that kind of stuff. So right now we're just sticking with the Lane Community College program. We may open that up in the future, but right now that's where we are. Next slide. So the most experienced professional potentially is a qualified energy auditor. So a qualified energy auditor is needed for tier 1 buildings that don't meet their energy target, because they have to perform an energy audit. And just to remind you, they have to do the energy audit before their compliance date. So, keep that in mind. And they may also be doing an optional life cycle cost assessment for those buildings. So those are the responsibilities of the QEA. They also have to submit a Form Q, and we want that before they start doing any audit work. They need to have at least 3 years of professional experience with building energy auditing and at least one of these certifications. So once again, they can be a professional engineer, professional architect. They can be a building energy assessment professional from ASHRAE. They can be a certified energy auditor from the Association of Energy Engineers. They can also be a certified energy manager, also from the Association of Energy Engineers, or an energy management professional from the Energy Management Association. So that ensures that we have people who have done auditing before, know what they're doing. It's a complicated field with a lot of knowledge. I can tell you right now, I've gotten applications for people in all 3 categories, and we are in good hands with the professionals that I'm seeing applying for this and being put onto our list. So very impressive set of people. So next slide. So how can you become one of these energy professionals? So as I said, the qualified energy professional, qualified energy manager or qualified person or energy auditor, you could either be an employee of the building owner or the owner organization. You don't have to get a third party, or you can get a third-party contractor. No matter who you hire to do this or task to do this, they have to meet the criteria of each role, and they have to submit a Form Q, the Energy Professional Qualifications form, to us before doing any work for the program. So the Form Q gives space to put all your professional credentials down. It includes an option to be added to our public facing list, which is lets other people know, hey, I'm putting out my shingle and I would like to do this work for you or for others. We do review these forms. We try to verify that people have the experience they say they have. We verify their licenses and their certifications. With that said, as much as we review, we don't know for sure that, it's still hire at your own risk if you're hiring a third party. We're doing our best to make sure these people are who they say they are. But that's best we can do. I encourage everybody to register as an energy professional at whatever level you're at right now. And if you upgrade, if you have more experience or you have earmarked a certification and then you go out and earn it, let us know and we can put you into the next level. Frankly, the more people that know, these skills about energy management and energy auditing, the better for our state. So next slide. So how do you find a qualified energy professional? I have mentioned that we do have a list of QEMs, QPs, and QEAs. So qualified energy managers that can work on tier 2 buildings, qualified persons or people who can work on tier 1 buildings to do the benchmarking, and qualified energy auditors that are required to do the energy auditing. We have a list of these professionals. It's on our website. It's a downloadable spreadsheet with a tab for each category. It's not formatted the best, but if someone has suggestions for how to improve that, let me know. So these are all the energy professionals who've submitted a Form Q to us and agreed to be listed publicly. There are some other energy professionals who don't want to be listed publicly. Maybe they just work for a certain agency or building and they're not, they don't want to do it for anybody else. That's fine too. This list is updated frequently, 1 to 2 weeks, every 1 to 2 weeks. I'm doing it this afternoon. I'll be updating it this afternoon. And once again, I want to say we don't endorse any of these energy professionals. We do our best to review their qualifications though. So you can download this list to find a qualified energy professional if you need one. And once again, I want to say what I'm seeing, there's a great amount of experience around here. Most of the professionals are from Oregon, few from Washington. As you may know, they also have a building performance standard program, so they're fairly experienced already. And a few from all over the country outside of our region. So I think that's it. Next slide. I think it's on to Andrew.
Thank you, Lisa. So we're going to be talking about BPS incentives. Next slide, please. We have 2 incentive programs. The state-funded program, which is $2 million of funding that came out of House Bill 3409. We're calling that ECAP, the Early Compliance Action and Planning Program. And the federally funded program, that's $12 million that came out of the CERTA grant, and we're calling that the Berry program, the Building Energy Reduction Incentive. So ECAP incentivizes early compliance, offers incentives for planning activities required for compliance. Tier 1 and Tier 2 buildings are eligible. The incentive is up to 85 cents per square foot with caps. Incentive awards are competitive, and we plan 2 funding rounds, $1 million in each round. The Berry program incentivizes early compliance as well, offers incentives for energy efficiency measures that reduce the energy use and greenhouse gas emissions. Tier 1, Tier 2, and travel buildings are eligible. Caps of $50,000 and $100,000 depending on the tier. Incentive awards are also competitive, and we plan 2 to 3 funding rounds depending on the available funding. Next slide, please. So the Early Compliance Action and Planning Program, buildings must be Tier 1 or Tier 2 covered commercial buildings. For Tier 1 buildings, they must have an energy use intensity that exceeds the energy use intensity target by at least 15 EUI units. That's written in statute. To receive an incentive payment, a building owner must demonstrate completion of the early compliance action at least 1 year before the building's compliance date. And due to the limited amount of funding, we decided to make this a competitive process. And priority will be given to buildings with the highest EUI percentage over the target. That's for tier 1 only. Multi-tenant buildings not in a qualified utility territory, buildings located in a rural area, smaller buildings, and multifamily residential and affordable housing. And that's tier 2 only. Next slide. As I mentioned, there are caps, $50,000 for tier 1 buildings greater than 200,000 square feet, $35,000 for tier 1 buildings 35,000 square feet to 200,000 square feet, and $10,000 for all tier 2 buildings. And there are 4 compliance actions available: energy benchmarking and reporting for 35 cents per square foot, energy management plan and operations and maintenance program for 5 cents per square foot, energy audit for 35 cents per square foot, and achieving compliance for 10 cents per square foot. You can apply for all 4 compliance actions if you like. You just need to keep in mind there are the maximum amounts per application. Next slide. And so a little update on ECAP. The first round closed on December 19th. We received 81 total applications, 27 tier 1 applications requesting $995,000, and 54 tier 2 applications requesting $527,000. You can see here that the total amount requested is about $1.5 million. We have $1 million available in this round, so that's $500,000 oversubscribed. So we are continuing the competitive review process. The applicants will be notified soon, and round 2 will begin sometime this spring. Next slide. So moving on to the next incentive program, the Building Energy Reduction Incentive Program. This is similar in terms of the eligibility and requirements, with a few differences. The building must be a tier 1 or tier 2 covered building, or must be a tribal owner of a building with similar size and building activity type as a tier 1 or tier 2 covered building. So ECAP, tier 1 and tier 2 buildings only. The Berry program, tier 1 and tier 2 buildings, and tribal buildings as well are eligible. The building must have a baseline energy use intensity that exceeds the energy use intensity target for all applications. So for the ECAP program, only tier 1 must be 15 EUI units over the target. For Berry, tier 1 and tier 2 and tribal buildings must just be over the target. And incentives must be used for energy efficiency measures such as HVAC and lighting upgrades. The ECAP program is focused on planning activities, and the Berry program is focused on actual upgrades. Next slide, please. To receive an incentive, a building must install energy efficiency measures to achieve compliance before the early compliance date. In other words, reduce the building's energy use intensity at or below the target. The maximum incentives are $100,000 for tier 1 and $50,000 for tier 2. And all funds must be claimed by the end of 2028. Since this is actually a grant from the US EPA, we need to make sure that the funding has been distributed by the end of 2028. Next slide. Similar competitive review process to here with the Berry program. Priority will be given to cost effectiveness of energy efficiency measures, strength of the project plan, and similar to ECAP, buildings located in a rural area, multifamily residential, and affordable housing. And applications will be a fillable PDF, similar to ECAP, with general building and building owner information, The difference here is that each application must submit an energy audit, and applications will be available very soon. We plan to launch the Berry program in early February. Next slide. And I think with that, I will hand it over to Blake.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew, and thanks for the rest of the team giving that overview of the Oregon Building Performance Standard. To accompany your help with your understanding of the standard and to accompany this presentation, we've also posted a series of guidance documents up on our website, ranging from general compliance, covering some of the how to use the how to find your energy use target, incentives, and a whole host of other guidance documents that will hopefully help you as you're reviewing the requirements and understanding what is all part of the Oregon Building Performance Standard program. So we've got these guidance documents, we've got a host of additional resources. We also have an email and a phone number that you can contact us at in order to ask questions and ask more like detailed questions, especially if you've got some specific questions about your building or the buildings that you're working with. We have the email, and we also have a help desk portal on our website that you can submit questions. They all go to the same place, and we try to be really responsive to those questions. Been able to field a lot of really good questions that have come in over the past few months on BPS, and look forward to doing that a lot more and interacting individually and one-on-one with building owners. So next slide, please. And I think that rounds out our presentation. We are exactly on schedule, so that's great. We've gotten a lot of questions coming in the chat so far, so I think now is an opportunity just to move through those questions and hopefully be able to respond to them in a complete way. But please feel free to follow up if you don't get everything that you're looking for with the responses that we give, and we'd be happy to work with you to help understand what questions you do have. I'm just going to start from the top with the questions that we got and work the way down. But the first question, I think this question is probably for you, Lisa. I have a question about groups and campuses and metering. Is virtual sub-metering a recognized option?
Oh, you know what? You're going to have to clue me in exactly how that would work. I'm not going to say no, but at this point, I'm not going to say yes. So that's a specific question. So.
That does sound like a pretty specific building specific question. So yeah, if there are any more like individual scenarios that you'd like to talk with our team about, the email is a great way to do that. Next question is, it seems like the QEM form on the website isn't working. Is there a workaround?
The QEM form has a place where you're supposed to click on it and send it. And for some people, that will pop up an email address, and then you attach it to the email and send it to us. If that doesn't work, it doesn't seem to work for everybody, just send it to us to OregonBPS@energy.oregon.gov, and I will get it and review it. So be persistent. It's like your first test of being a QEM or QP or QEA is, can you get the form to us? So.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. The next question, at what point do tier ones have to do an audit? They can do energy efficiency measures to try to get there without it until what date? And is there an EUI differential between the target and the standard where you would advise to do an audit, such as 15 EUI points? So if a building owner reviews where they are with their weather normalized EUI and compares it to their target, and they've got a couple years to go, and say they're above their target, they may want to do an audit just to identify measures to help them get there. That may be helpful to help them inform which measures might help them meet their target. They would need to do a level 2 ASHRAE energy audit if they want to use that audit and that process to comply via the investment criteria pathway. But as far as when they need to do an audit, it might be helpful now, but if they feel like they can install measures and get down to their energy use intensity target before their compliance date and have 12 months of data, to prove that they're below their target, they wouldn't necessarily need to document that audit, that ASHRAE level 2 audit, as far as compliance goes. Lisa, I'll let you add in if there's anything I missed there.
Yeah, that's about right. I mean, if I were a building owner, I would be getting all of my ducks in a row and trying to figure out where I was right now. Am I going to meet my target or not? If I'm just a little bit off my target, say less than 15 points, I don't really have a guideline. It's building by building. But if you're close to your target and you think that you can meet it before the compliance state, which means you have to have 12 months of data adding up, consistently to keep you below target, great. Go for it. But if not, if you think you're way above it, or you really don't even know what you're supposed to do, get an energy audit and do it now. And try to start implementing measures. If possible, you can implement measures in time that you don't have to even submit the energy audit to us, because you're already in compliance, you've met your target. But if you haven't met your target, as Blake said, you will need to submit the energy audit to us, and it should be a level 2 audit. So if you're going to bother with an audit at all, get a good one. Get the qualified one.
Good advice. Next question for tier 2, won't tier 2 buildings eventually have targets? And would these targets be established with a different rulemaking? So right now, tier 2 buildings actually already have targets. They're in the target table in the standard. When a tier 2 building reports its energy use, it will report its energy use and then also will report its energy use intensity target as well in 2028. But tier 2 buildings don't need to yet meet that target. And one of our directives is to provide a recommendation to the governor and the legislature in 2030 for a building performance standard for tier 2 buildings. So we wouldn't develop that full performance standard for tier 2 buildings through a rulemaking. That would happen after the recommendation to the governor and the legislature, and there'd be multiple steps involved there. But that wouldn't be something that we do through rulemaking to develop a full BPS for tier 2 buildings. But as far as targets go, tier 2 buildings already have targets, but those are mainly just a placeholder and kind of for reference right now. As we go about our effort. Yeah, go ahead.
Jump in and just say, I saw a few questions. It's like, are tier 2 and tier 1 building targets the same? They're the same. It's the targets are the targets based on the building activity type. And right now, the difference is that tier 2 buildings don't have to meet their energy targets, but tier 1 buildings, we want them to try to meet their energy targets. And if they don't, take some action. So.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Next question is for you two. What criteria is needed to identify a historic building?
If you look at our guide, I don't have it at the top of my mind, but there's a guidance document that tells exactly what we need to get from you to qualify. Right. So now be aware that just because you're historic doesn't mean you don't report your energy use to us, or it doesn't mean that you don't have to maybe do some work. What it means is that, if you have historic windows in your building and one of the cost-effective measures is to replace those windows, you would not need to do that because you're historic and you have an out for that. And there may be other similar measures that an energy auditor would come up with that might violate the historic integrity of that building. You don't need to do those. That's what the historic building designation can do for you in this program.
Great, thanks, Lisa. Next question, what about church buildings? Are church buildings covered?
Yes, they are. Church buildings are covered. And I saw another question, can church buildings apply for incentives? And yes, they can. Churches are not exempt. They're not one of the types of buildings that that the legislature called out as having an exemption or not even an exemption or even not being covered. They're definitely covered and they are not subject to exemptions.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. The next question is around compliance penalties. And is it still true that penalties for non-compliance are reduced if building owners report data to ODO? So I think it was mentioned before, the penalties are $5,000 plus $1 per square foot per year. There is a provision in if you read through the section of the standard that talks about the compliance penalties, if after the process of assessing a civil penalty goes through and as Odo's working with the building owner, there is a potential for reducing that penalty if the building owner develops a complete mitigation plan for noncompliance, for how to get from noncompliance into compliance, and submits that sufficiently to Odo. So it's not as simple as just reporting building energy use data to Odo to receive a reduced compliance civil penalty. It would be after we go through the process of the notice of violation and actual assessment of the civil penalty, then development of a complete mitigation plan could result in a reduced penalty. Next question, I think this one is for Madeline. Who should we contact with UBID numbers and the property inventory list? I have a customer whose building was assigned a UBID and was accessible in the property inventory list. However, that assigned number is no longer working in the property inventory list.
I'd say just email that portal, oregonbps@energy.oregon.gov. Your email will come to me and we'll work together to find it. If you also have a lot of buildings, say your portfolio of buildings is 10, 13, 15, 80, and you don't want to type in all of the long UBIDs, go ahead and email me as well, and I can send you a digital copy so you can just copy and paste.
Yeah, thanks, Madeline. And if you find a building that doesn't have a UBID, feel free to contact us. Next question, the energy bills need to be within 2 years of the date that you submit, not the compliance deadline, right? So that a building can submit early. I think this is referring to selecting 12 months within 2 years to demonstrate compliance with the energy use intensity target. I think this is maybe a question for Lisa.
Yeah, that's correct. It's 24 months before the submission date. You need to pull your energy bills for 24 months before your submission date, not your compliance date. And you could pick any consecutive 12 months in that period to represent your EUI.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Next question, are the utilities aware of the utility meter data requests that will be coming their way? Currently, the turnaround can be lengthy and may not always contain data for each meter number.
Yeah, good question. We talk with our utilities very regularly, and especially those in the qualified utility territory. So those are the IOUs plus EWEB. Yes, the utilities are aware. Through the legislation, they have, I believe, 60 days to turn around that request. So hopefully the turnaround can be more appropriate.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Madeline. Next question, parking areas have heating and lighting that is metered under the building. How is that factored in or out of the building EUI? I think this one's for you, Lisa.
Yeah, this is for me. So this is a good question for energy professionals that are submitting this information. There is going to be a correction factor for that, and it's based on some Energy Star portfolio manager allowances for various heating, lighting, typical parking garage allowances. So that there is a correction. It will be included in the application, the Form C application materials. And we will be talking about that in some upcoming seminars.
Great, thanks. Next question, can exterior heaters, fireplaces, or cell towers be excluded from the EUI?
Yes, well, they should be able to be, but it depends. If it's separately metered, take it out. If it's not separately metered, we don't have correction factors for those things yet. I can see I might need to start developing that. So let me know, and I will start looking it up when needed.
Thanks.
Sorry, it's an
Yeah.
it's an evolving program.
Yeah,
here.
very specific, building scenarios there. Does the EUI target sheet take into account multiple uses within a single building or campus?
Yes, it does. So you could have a building that has mixed use. There are certainly a lot of buildings that might have like retail on the ground floor and apartments above. So the target tool, when you figure out what your tier is, one of the reasons I say use the target tool to be sure is because it takes into account these kinds of scenarios that if you have a building with mixed uses, multiple uses, it'll figure out where your tier is. And sometimes it's a little bit of a surprise where you end up. And also for group buildings, the target tool allows you to put in a whole bunch of buildings that are metered together. As a matter of fact, you'd have to do that if they're metered together and you can't separate out their energy use. So the target tool allows you to bring all those group buildings together and figure out usually it's like their collective tier. Sometimes it's, we didn't talk about extended tier 2, and I won't get into this today, but sometimes a tier 1 building might be able to become a tier 2 building because of its grouping. Anyway, did I answer that, Blake?
I think so. Yeah, I think
clarify.
simple answer, yes. And tune in to a future webinar that focuses on the EUI target tool. So more to come on that. Is there a list of qualified persons? Yes, there is. I can answer that one. And I think there was a link already put in the chat there, but there's a list of all the qualified professionals, QEMs and qualified energy auditors that's posted up on the website that we update periodically as we receive those Form Qs.
I'm making an update today, so.
Right, yeah. For the qualified person qualification, what about the EMIT? I think that's Energy Manager in Training from AEE. Is that a certification?
It's not current. It is not a certification currently.
Thanks. I think this one, changing gears, is for Andrew and Josh. When will incentive round 2 end?
Yeah, good question. So incentive round 2 for ECAP will open sometime this spring, and it will end 60 days after the opening date. So
Yeah,
exact
thanks.
dates to be determined for ECAP round 2.
Thanks. I think we already kind of answered this one. Are churches eligible for incentives? The answer is yes, they are. Next question, a multifamily apartment property of 5 separate 8-unit buildings with a total square footage of 36,840 square feet. Units are individually metered, would have to submit a Form A and B. Is that correct?
They would need to submit a Form A, B, and C. So there.
Right.
So that's the Form A is the application. The Form B is the energy use intensity target value. And Form C is your actual energy use intensity of that building. And the reason it needs to, and it will be a tier 2 building because it's one of the special tier 2 categories. But it's above 35,000 square feet. So it will need to submit all 3.
Right. Ken has the hand raised, and I think he has a clarification. I think I maybe know. But go ahead, Ken.
Just in that situation, I think we'd want to verify that each one of those buildings is above the square footage threshold.
Right. Yeah, that's a good clarification. So the building performance standards square footage thresholds are on an individual unit building basis. If you have individual discrete buildings that combined are over the threshold, wouldn't necessarily be covered buildings. It's on the individual unit basis, having to be over that 20,000 or 35,000 square foot threshold in order to be covered. Yeah. Next question is for the Berry program. Would a tier 2 building use the tier 1 target?
Yeah, I think Lisa answered that one. The targets are the same for tier 1 and tier 2.
Right.
based on the activity type.
Yeah, thanks. Next question. Are any other incentives, additional funding for the current incentives planned?
No. Beyond the $2 million for ECAP and the $12 million for the Berry program, there are no plans to offer additional funding. I think that's the question.
Yeah.
But just to follow up on that, though, I think I mentioned earlier that we have different rounds for each program. So we have a couple of rounds for ECAP and then 2 to 3 rounds for Berry. So there will be additional funding rounds coming from the existing funding later on this year.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Next question, still focusing on incentives. Can an owner of multiple buildings apply separately for all their buildings, or is there a limit to how many applications an owner can submit?
Yeah, great question. So it's a max of 2 applications per building owner.
Yeah, thanks. Next question, back to Lisa. Are sports stadiums a property use type that requires reporting?
Yep, yes, they are.
Thanks. And next question, what criteria exist to qualify as an industrial service facility? And I'm wondering if this is maybe geared toward the manufacturing exemption. I think that's probably where this question is focused.
Yes. And so those need to be either a factory group F or hazard group H. So you need to have some kind of documentation that your building has that kind of a, I'm not sure if it's a building code or some kind of permit or whatever, but you need to be able to verify that you're in one of those 2 groups.
Right. Thanks, Lisa. Next question. Standard 100 says in section 5.2.1.1.c that the authority having jurisdiction, which is ODO, may create a deduction for certain energy uses such as vehicle battery charging and possibly others. How might we as QPs, QEAs, and QEMs get clarity on the process for confirming what the AHJ will allow? So yeah, it's a good question. We have outlined a couple of specific deductions in there, like for EV chargers. And I know the Energy Star Portfolio Manager program will have the way to estimate usage for things like EV charger energy use. For any other uses, I think we'll just need to, we're happy to talk with energy auditors and qualified persons and qualified energy managers on those cases and see if there are more common type deductions that we would want to offer some individual guidance on and individual factors on. So we don't have any that are kind of in the works right now. Lisa mentioned earlier in response to one of the previous questions that we'd be happy to work with the industry reps if there are some more common type end use deductions that really aren't part of the building energy use. But right now we don't have any other ones that are planned or in the works specifically.
Yeah, and if I could just address a little bit of the rationale behind this, certainly like the EV charger, we've already talked about the parking garage, parking area deductions, allowances, if those are included in your metering already. The reason for that is because the buildings energy sector and the transportation energy sector, we're trying to keep those distinct. So that's what those allowances are based on, is trying to separate out the different energy use sectors. And then, someone else had that other question about cell towers and things like that. Those are, if those are outside of your building, but they happen to be metered by your building, which does happen, that's probably an allowance that we want to make. So those are the types of allowances that we're, more likely to consider than others. So.
Right. Yeah. And cell towers are actually specifically called out in the within the standard, but I imagine there are others that we just haven't yet incorporated. So next question. Can an Energy Trust technical analysis study take the place of a level 2 audit? ETO studies are often paid for by ETO and accomplish similar goals. In order to meet the investment criteria pathway, if a building owner is going that pathway, it needs to meet the full ASHRAE Level 2 energy audit criteria. Something like a technical analysis study or something lighter, I think would be a great tool to help a building owner identify what their potential measures are at, like right now at this point, in order to reduce their energy and maybe comply with the EUI target before the compliance date, where they don't need to even demonstrate a level 2 audit. But in order to meet compliance through the investment criteria pathway, if an owner goes that way, it would need to be an ASHRAE Level 2 energy audit. And I'll let Lisa add if there's anything else in there too that I missed.
I think that's true. I'm
Yeah.
not sure. I
Okay.
think for conditional compliance, it also has to be a level 2
Yes.
audit. So,
does, yeah.
you know, anytime you're telling us you're not going to be able to meet your energy target before the compliance date, you're going to need to have a level 2 audit. And, you know, unless that technical assessment is more rigorous than I'm guessing, it probably wouldn't qualify, but it might be a great first step, and it might help an energy auditor, give them something to work with and maybe reduce the cost of the level 2 audit work that they have to do. You'd have to speak to your auditors. So,
Yeah, thanks. And I think this is the last question that we have for now, but would EV charging stations also be excluded if sub-metered? And I think we've answered that. The answer is yes.
Yeah.
So we did just get another question in, and it says, I think this is for Lisa. We got a couple of questions. I'll go back up to that one first. But Lisa, it seems like you were encouraging building owners or employees appointed by owners to apply as qualified energy managers if they perceive they might have sufficient experience to qualify. Can you speak further to the qualifications for a QEM?
Sure. Was it the 2 years or 2 years of experience with building energy management? Just tell us that you've been managing a building for 2 years. There's a lot involved in building management. You're paying the utility bills, you're doing repairs, you're talking to tenants. You've got your thumb on the pulse of what's going on. So,
Yep, and I just pasted the definition from the standard of a QEM into the chat for reference in case that's helpful.
And I do encourage people to apply. So, yes.
And then another question that just came in, where could we find details about the requirements for decarbonization plans for campuses with district heating and cooling?
There is a guidance document that I pulled together in the last couple of months. It's BPS 012, the 12th one on decarbonization plans. So that's a place to start. If you have more questions about it, let me know, and we can guide you further. I don't think too many places are going to actually need to do these, but they might. So if you're one of those people that need to, I'm here to help.
Great. Thanks. Okay, we have 7 minutes left. I don't see any more questions coming in right now, but I think we can hang on the line for a few more minutes just in case folks do have remaining questions. Thanks so much for all the great questions that came in. Thanks for sticking with us here for almost an hour and a half and listening to the presentation and then asking some really engaging, thoughtful questions about BPS. We're always here to help you understand what the requirements are and look forward to continued conversations. We have a question from Vin about going back to slide 17.
Slide 17, what a mystery.
Yeah.
What was that slide?
Judy, can you pull it up, maybe?
All right, Vin, do you have a question? There's slide 17. So once again, tier 2 buildings, Form A or G, Form B and Form C, that's just the benchmarking portion of the application. And then tier 2 buildings have to benchmark. So forms A or G and B and C, and then they have to attest to their O&M plans and their energy management plans. And they need to meet their energy target. And if they don't meet their energy target, they should take some action. They have to take some action. Let us know 180 days before your compliance date that you don't expect to meet target. Start to work toward getting your energy audit done before your compliance date and submitting a Form E to us. And you need to figure out what you think your compliance path is going to be. And we had 3 options for those people. There was the conditional compliance. We could go to the next slide even, just because this is important to go over it one more time. Could you go to the next slide, Judy? You're getting a bonus, slide 18 again. So the 3 paths, if you don't meet your target before the compliance date, conditional compliance says, hey, I did my energy audit and we're implementing measures. We've implemented all our measures before the compliance date, and we think we're going to meet our target, but we need, 12 months of data to collect. So we need some more time. So that's conditional compliance. The investment criteria is, we did our energy audit by the compliance date. We came up with a bunch of measures, but those measures are not enough to bump us down below our energy target. And that's going to be the case for a lot of buildings. They're just not going to have enough measures. Some of these buildings are old and just can't be completely fixed. So that's your investment criteria. We've done everything we need to do. We've installed all the measures that you asked us to do, but we're not going to be able to meet the energy target. And what we want you to do is just report to us after you've gotten a year's worth of data after that last measure's been implemented. And so you may need some time for that. And then the third option, investment criteria through conditional compliance, is you've done your energy audit before the compliance date. You have a list of energy efficiency measures that are cost effective, but you're not able to do them all right now. Maybe you don't have enough time, maybe you don't have enough expertise or, bandwidth on your staff. Maybe you don't have enough money right now, but you're planning to do them and you have a plan to do them, and you're going to be phasing them in over time. And that will require, that's the investment criteria through conditional compliance. That's the one where you definitely have to do a life cycle cost assessment as well as the energy audit. That sort of tells us, and that will tell you, how much energy you're going to save over time, what your sophisticated financial analyses, how much you're going to have to need to invest over time, and how much you'll get back in the investment over time. So those are the 3 compliance paths. I hope I clarified that a little bit more for Vin.
Yeah,
and
thanks,
others.
Lisa. Yeah. There's a follow-up question there about what do you think about identifying the QP before step 3 so they can help inform the compliance path decisions rather than just being a verifier afterwards?
The QP needs to be confirmed before you submit any Form B or Form C. They need to oversee the calculation of your energy use intensity and the determination of your energy use intensity target. So, and your QP can absolutely help you if you have to have an energy audit to help you figure out, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? All of that. They will be helping to guide you through there. So I would get the QP as soon as you can.
Yeah, thanks. A couple other questions coming in here in the last couple minutes, but one is, can you speak to the legitimacy warning on the BPS Odo homepage? I'll address that briefly. So we sent out notification letters to many building owners last year in 2 rounds. Around the same time as one of the rounds was going out, we also got word that a lot of building owners are receiving similar letters from vendors, claiming to help or offering to help comply with the BPS that almost looked like it was an official letter from Odo. So we put this warning up on our website just as a reminder that we don't, as an state agency, endorse any individual vendors. There aren't any direct partnerships that you need to go through one vendor or one firm in order to comply. There are a lot of service providers out there that can help comply with BPS, but please, if you do receive a letter or a notification, please review that carefully in case it is not an official notification from Odo. There's examples of what our letters look like up on the website if you need something to compare it to. But just do be cautious when you receive marketing materials from vendors to ensure that the information contained is official and accurate. We noticed that there was a lot of misleading and inaccurate information on some of the letters that were being sent out. So just a reminder to be cautious and review things carefully. There's a question about, can an owner use multiple QPs for different stages?
Definitely. You're not wedded to your QP forever. You can change over, have a different one. So just let us know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. And then can an organization, a third-party vendor, be put on the Form Q list? Fill out Form Q.
Was that a question? I missed that.
I think so. Yeah, it just came in. I think the answer is yes. Certainly, third-party vendors can serve as qualified professionals for the BPS program. Okay, we are at time and I don't see any other questions. So once again, just thanks everybody for attending. Thanks to the BPS team for a fantastic overview of the Oregon BPS program. Hopefully this was helpful, and we look forward to future conversations with the industry and with building owners. So thanks, everyone.